Another good day. So last time we read, Eddie was in the mountains and he was at a diner. And who did he see there? And the question is, third person in heaven, who is going to be Eddie's third person in heaven? Could you make a guess at this point? Today is Eddie's birthday. In the dim and sterile hallway of the VA hospital, VA stands for Veterans Administration, Eddie's mother opens the white bakery box and rearranges the candles on the cake, making them even, 12 on one side, 12 on the other. The rest of them, Eddie's father, Joe, Marguerite, Mickey Shea, stand around her watching. "Anybody have a match?" she whispers. They pat their pockets. Mickey fishes a pack from his jacket, dropping 2 loose cigarettes on the floor. Eddie's mother lights the candles. An elevator pings down the hall. A gurney emerges. "All right then, let's go," she says. The small flames wiggle as they move together. The group enters Eddie's room, singing softly, "Happy birthday to you, happy birthday." The soldier in the next bed wakes up yelling, "What the heck?" And he realizes where he is and drops back down, embarrassed. The song, once interrupted, seems too heavy to lift again, and only Eddie's mother's voice, shaking in its solitude, is able to continue. "Happy birthday, dear Eddie." Then quickly, "Happy birthday to you." Eddie props himself against a pillow. His burns are bandaged, his leg in a long cast. There's a pair of crutches by the bed. He looks at these faces and he's consumed by the desire to run away. Joe clears his throat. "Well, hey, you look pretty good," he says. The others all agree, "Good, yes, very good." "Your mom got you a cake," Marguerite whispers. Eddie's mother steps forward as if it's her turn. She presents the cardboard box. Eddie mumbles, "Thanks, Ma." She looks around. "Now, where should we put this?" Mickey grabs a chair. Joe clears a small tabletop. Marguerite moves Eddie's crutches. Only his father does not shuffle for the sake of shuffling. He stands against the back wall, a jacket over his arm, staring at Eddie's leg, encased in plaster from thigh to ankle. Eddie catches his eye. His father looks down and runs his hand over the windowsill. Eddie tightens every muscle in his body and attempts by sheer will to force back the tears into their ducts. So again, we've talked about the relationship between Eddie and his father and Eddie and Mickey Shea. Do we see any clues in that passage that gives us another idea of the relationship between Eddie and his father? All parents damage their children. It cannot be helped. Youth, like pristine glass, absorbs the prints of its handlers. Some parents smudge, others crack, a few shatter childhoods completely into jagged little pieces beyond repair. The damage done by Eddie's father was, at the beginning, the damage of neglect. As an infant, Eddie was rarely held by the man, and as a child, you can tell there's cars going by. And as a child, he was mostly grabbed by the arm, less with love than with annoyance. Eddie's mother handed out the tenderness. His father was there for the discipline. On Saturdays, Eddie's father took him to the pier. Eddie would leave the apartment with visions of carousels and globs of cotton candy, but after an hour or so, his father would find a familiar face and say, "Watch the kid for me, will ya?" Until his father returned, usually late in the afternoon, often drunk, Eddie stayed in the custody of an acrobat or an animal trainer. Still, for countless hours of his boardwalk youth, Eddie waited for his father's attention, sitting on railings or squatting in his short pants atop tool chests in the repair shop. Often he'd say, I can help, but the only job entrusted to him was crawling beneath the Ferris wheel in the morning before the park opened to look for coins that had fallen from the customers' pockets the night before. At least 4 evenings a week, his father played cards. The table had money, bottles, cigarettes, and rules. Eddie's rule was simple: do not disturb. Once he tried to stand next to his father and look at his cards, but the old man put down his cigar and erupted like thunder, smacking Eddie's face with the back of his hand. "Stop breathing on me," he said. Eddie burst into tears, and his mother pulled him to her waist, glaring at her husband. Eddie never got that close again. Other nights when the cards went bad and the bottles had been emptied and his mother was already asleep, his father brought his thunder into Eddie and Joe's bedroom. He raked through the meager toys, hurling them against the wall. And then he made his sons lie face down on the mattress while he pulled off his belt and lashed their rear ends, screaming that they were wasting his money on junk. Eddie used to pray for his mother to wake up. But even the time she did, his father warned her to stay out of it. Seeing her in the hallway, clutching her robe, as helpless as he was, made it all even worse. The hands on Eddie's childhood glass then were hard and calloused and red with anger, and he went through his younger years whacked, lashed, and beaten. This was the second damage done after neglect, the damage of violence. It got so Eddie could tell by the thump of the footsteps coming down the hall how hard he was going to get it. And through it all, despite it all, Eddie privately adored his old man, because sons will adore their fathers even through the worst of behavior. It is how they learn devotion. Before he can devote himself to God or a woman, a boy will devote himself to his father, even foolishly, even beyond explanation. And on occasion, as if to feed the weakest embers of a fire, Eddie's father let a wrinkle of pride crack at the veneer of his disinterest. At the baseball field by the 14th Avenue schoolyard, his father stood behind the fence watching Eddie play. If Eddie smacked the ball to the outfield, his father nodded, and when he did, Eddie leaped around the bases. Other times, when Eddie came home from an alley fight, his father would notice his scraped knuckles or split lip. He would ask, "What happened to the other guy?" And Eddie would say he got him good. This, too, met with his father's approval. And when Eddie attacked the kids who were bothering his brother, the hoodlums, his mother called them, Joe was ashamed and hid in his room, but Eddie's father said, "Never mind him. You're the strong one. Be your brother's keeper. Don't let nobody touch him." And when Eddie started junior high, he mimicked his father's summer schedule, rising before the dawn, working at the park until nightfall. At first, he ran the simpler rides, maneuvering the brake levers, bringing train cars to a gentle stop. In later years, he worked in the repair shop. Eddie's father would test him with maintenance problems. He'd hand him a broken steering wheel and say, "Fix it." He'd point out a tangled chain and say, "Fix it." He'd carry over a rusty fender and some sandpaper and say, "Fix it." And every time, upon completion of the task, Eddie would walk the item back to his father and say, "It's fixed." At night they would gather at the dinner table, his mother plump and sweating, cooking by the stove, his brother Joe talking away, his hair and skin smelling from seawater. Joe had become a good swimmer, and his summer work was at Ruby Pier Pool. Joe talked all about the people he saw there, their swimsuits, their money. Eddie's father was not impressed. Once Eddie overheard him talking to his mother about Joe. "That one," he said, "ain't tough enough for anything but water." Still, Eddie envied the way his brother looked in the evenings, so tanned and clean. Eddie's fingernails, like his father's, were stained with grease, and at the dinner table, Eddie would flick them with his thumbnail, trying to get the dirt out. He caught his father watching him once, and the old man grinned. "Shows you did a hard day's work," he said, and held up his own dirty fingernails before wrapping them around a glass of beer. By this point, already a strapping teenager, Eddie only nodded back. Unbeknownst to him, he'd begun the ritual of semaphore with his father, forsaking words or physical affection. It was all to be done internally. You were just supposed to know it, that's all. denial of affection, the damage done. I guess we have a better insight into Eddie and his father's relationship now. But there's a word, once again, we have a kind of a question of the day. We'll figure out who could be the first. They said, unbeknownst to him, he'd begun the ritual semaphore with his father. Semaphore. S-E-M-A-P-H-O-R-E. What is a semaphore? Unless you go ahead and watch other stories, this is our Friday. Hope you had a good week. Hope you did well. And be safe. Wash your hands. 6 feet. And think of me. Oops.